In Victorian factories, children who fell asleep could have their ears nailed to the workbench just to keep them awake during 14-hour shifts. Hey guys, imagine you suddenly woke up in 1851 Manchester and, bad news, you're a Victorian factory worker now. Forget soft pillows or lazy mornings. The factory bell is your alarm clock. It shrieks before sunrise, and if you don't move fast enough, you lose wages. Miss too many bells, you're out. No job, no food, just like that. You stumble out of a cramped, damp room packed with other families, 10, sometimes 12 people crammed into a single space. The air is thick with coal smoke and stale sweat, and you're already coughing before the day even begins. Breakfast? Maybe a crust of bread if you're lucky. And here's the punch in the gut. This moment, right now, standing in the smoky dawn, is probably the calmest part of your whole day. The factory looms ahead, a black monster of brick and smoke. You join the river of bodies flowing through the gates. Men, women, even kids as small as 5. Kids shuffle in barefoot, already yawning. You can hear the machines roaring from the street. It sounds like the earth itself is grinding apart. Step inside, and it feels like you've entered the belly of a beast. The noise is unreal. Spinning mules clanging, power looms hammering, gears shrieking. You can't even hear your own thoughts. Cotton dust floats through the air, stinging your eyes and clogging your throat. After a while, you'll start coughing up little balls of lint. They even have a name for it. Mill fever. Sounds harmless, right? But keep breathing it in and your lungs slowly rot. And the dangers? You're working shoulder to shoulder with machines that don't care if you're tired, slow, or just a kid. No guards, no safety switches. If your sleeve snags in the gears, that's it. Gone. Fingers, arms, sometimes lives. And the crazy part? The bosses don't stop the machine. They just drag out the broken body and slot the next worker in. You wear the same grimy clothes every day.
And here's the truth. Most of this labor isn't even adult work. Kids are prized in the mills because they're small enough to crawl under the machines to clean them while they're still running. Imagine being 7 years old, flat on your belly under iron gears bigger than your body, scraping out dust while hoping nothing catches your hair. One wrong twitch and you don't come out whole. Parents let their kids do it because they need the extra pennies to keep the family alive. That's the brutal irony. Your children are both your hope and your sacrifice. Shift lengths? 12 to 14 hours, 6 days a week. Overtime isn't optional, it's survival. Breaks are tiny, sometimes just minutes, barely enough to shovel in watery soup. Forget weekends. The factory doesn't care if your body aches or your kid is sick. If you don't show up, there are 10 others waiting to take your place. And the power balance? All in the boss's hands. Factory owners are kings in this world, and workers are pawns. You can be fined for being late, for talking, for dropping a tool, even for looking lazy. Sometimes the fines are more than you earned that day. Complain, you're out. And worse, your name gets blacklisted so no other mill will hire you. The message is clear. Shut up, work, or starve. Meanwhile, society looks down at you. To the upper classes, you're the dangerous poor, useful for labor but untrustworthy, dirty, and in need of moral improvement. Funny, isn't it? The same people who depend on your work for their cotton clothes sneer at you in the streets. At home, things aren't easier. Your whole family works the mills, husband, wife, and children, all pulling shifts just to keep rent paid. That means kids grow up with no real childhood.
Just years of aching muscles and cold smoke in their lungs. Families live in tiny, crowded houses where disease spreads like wildfire. Typhus, cholera, tuberculosis, any illness can rip through a whole street in weeks. And when the father collapses from exhaustion or a child dies in an accident, the factory doesn't pause to mourn. Tomorrow, the bell still rings.
Now, you might wonder, weren't there laws against this? Weren't kids protected? Sort of. Parliament passed a few factory acts starting in the early 1800s, limiting child hours or banning the youngest kids from working. Sounds good, right? But here's the twist. Nobody was really checking. Inspectors were too few, and bosses found ways around the rules. On paper, kids under 9 weren't supposed to work. In reality, plenty of tiny hands still oiled machines before dawn. This tension between brutal survival and the faint hope of change runs under every moment of your day. Workers cling to scraps of hope, rumours of reforms, whispers of unions, the dream that someday their children might escape the mills. But in the meantime, the reality is simple. The machine eats you alive, one shift at a time. And here's the detail historians still argue about. Was it getting better or staying the same? Some say reforms slowly improved conditions. Others insist the horror dragged on well into the late 19th century. Either way, you're the one coughing in the dust, not the historian. And right now, staring at the endless rows of machines, the only thing you know for certain is this. Tomorrow will look exactly the same, unless something breaks. You're back on the factory floor, and today is something different. There's a new machine standing where the old one used to be. Bigger, faster, louder. The foreman grins like it's progress, but to you it looks like a trap. The iron teeth spin faster than your eyes can track, belts whipping around like they're alive. Everyone whispers the same thought. This thing is going to take someone's hand before the week is out. And then it happens. A worker's sleeve catches, the machine jerks, and in seconds it's blood on the floor, screams swallowed by the roar of gears. The factory doesn't stop. It never stops. The body is carried out, and the machine goes back to eating cotton and people. And here's the sickest part. You don't have time to process it because your shift keeps rolling. That accident isn't just his nightmare, it's your warning. But the machine isn't just dangerous, it's insulting. See, every new piece of tech doesn't just chew up flesh, it chews up skill. Men who once prided themselves on craft, spinners, weavers, machinists, now find themselves replaced by iron and steam. Years of experience erased by gears. And what do the bosses say? Cheaper labour. Translation, less money in your pocket, more profit in theirs.
So, you stand there in the lint-choked air, lungs burning, and the debate starts in your head. Do you shut up and keep grinding, praying you make it home in one piece? Or do you fight back? Easy question in theory, but here's the reality. Missing one shift means no food on the table. Piss off the wrong boss and your name gets blacklisted, you'll be lucky to scrub floors for pennies. Survival and rebellion pull at you like two machines dragging your arms in opposite directions. You know strikes happen. You've heard whispers about workers banding together, refusing to turn the machines, but strikes are risky. When workers walk out, bosses call in police, sometimes even soldiers, to smash picket lines. People get beaten, jailed, or worse. And you've got a wife at home, kids depending on every penny. Are you really going to gamble their bread on a dream of better conditions? And then there's your health. Your chest feels tighter every week, coughing harder every morning. Sometimes blood speckles your rag when you wipe your mouth and you think, is this worth it? But then you look at your daughter sitting at the machine next to you, too small for her stool, and you choke the thought down because quitting isn't an option. Starvation doesn't sound safer than lung disease. The debate spills into family arguments. Your wife begs you not to join the strike. They can't survive a week without pay. Your brother says, if we don't stand up now, we'll die here anyway. Neighbours whisper about secret meetings in taverns, passing pamphlets hand to hand, while others shake their heads and say, don't be stupid, the bosses always win. Here's the twist. Even as society looks down on you, you feel pride. Weird, right? The newspapers call you unskilled and immoral. But you know damn well without you, those looms don't move, the cotton doesn't spin, and Britain doesn't get rich. Pride and humiliation live side by side in your chest like two quarrelling tenants. So what you do? One night, after another brutal shift, you don't go straight home. You slip into the back room of a pub where men huddle in the bark. Someone whispers about forming a union. Another talks about a strike fund. Someone else mentions the Chartists fighting for workers to get the vote. Your heart pounds, not from the ale, but from the risk. If the boss finds out you were here, you're finished. But if you walk away now, you'll be crawling under machines until you collapse.
This is the moment, the break. You stop just enduring and start choosing. Whether it's joining a strike, signing your name to a union list, or just passing a handbill under the table, you've crossed the line. You're no longer just a cog in the machine. You're a threat to it. But here's the brutal irony. Your decision isn't guaranteed glory. Strikes get crushed, organisers get jailed, unions get banned. Sometimes the only thing you win is a beating. Historians still argue about whether workers in your shoes really made progress in the mid-19th century, or if it was just tiny cracks in an iron wall. Some say change was slow, others say resistance was constant, but standing here in the smoky air, staring at the machine that nearly ate your co-worker alive, you know one thing. Doing nothing feels like slow death. So you make your choice. You lean into the upside-down world of resistance, where hope is dangerous, but silence is deadly. And as the factory bell clangs the start of another endless shift, you know you've stepped into a fight that's bigger than your paycheck, bigger than one worker. This is survival, but on a different level. Imagine yourself there. Could you actually survive this? Let me know. You're exhausted, coughing up dust, half deaf from the machines, and then some stranger whispers, "It doesn't have to be like this." This is your first taste of the real story. Not the factory owner barking rules, not the overseer with the whip hand stare, but the organizer. The one who shows up after hours in a back room, telling you that workers have rights, that solidarity is power. Think about it. You've spent your whole life being told you're replaceable, just another cog. And suddenly, here's someone insisting you matter, that you're part of something bigger than surviving one more shift. It hits like a secret you weren't supposed to hear. Of course, it's risky. The law's not on your side. Half the time, unions are technically illegal. Meetings are hushed, doors locked, guards posted. If the bosses catch you, you're sacked. If the police catch you, maybe fined, maybe jailed. And still workers go. Because hope is a drug. And once you've tasted it, the daily grind feels unbearable without it. But it's not just organisers keeping people sane, it's the camaraderie on the shop floor. The guy who sneaks you a crust of bread on break, the woman who patches up your hand after the loom mangles it. The families crammed into slums, watching out for each other's kids. That's the real lifeline. Not charity from above, but solidarity sideways.
Meanwhile, upstairs, the factory owners see you as numbers on a ledger, replaceable parts. If you burn out, hire the next desperate body. They fight every attempt at reform like it's an attack on civilization itself.
They don't see your exhaustion, your kids coughing blood. They see profits slipping. And yet cracks are forming. Evening schools pop up, teaching kids to read by candlelight. Preachers argue for decency from the pulpit. By 1870, the state even admits children deserve classrooms, not just factory floors. Sure, attendance is spotty. Half those kids still get dragged to work. But for the first time, the idea exists that maybe the next generation doesn't have to live like you. That's the real story in this world. People around you, mentors, comrades, even dreamers, pulling you towards something more. Not just survival, but dignity, a voice, a future. And deep down, you start to believe them, even if believing might cost you everything. The bell rings. Not your alarm clock, the factory's. That shriek means it's time to fall in line. Oversleep, and you're fined before you even touch machine. You file into the mill with hundreds of others, steam hissing from pipes overhead, air already heavy with dust. The room is dim, no real sunlight, just a few grimy windows and lamps barely cutting the haze. You squint, but it doesn't matter. Your job isn't to see. Your job is to keep pace. And pace means speed, always faster. Machines roar so loud you can't even hear yourself curse when you nick your hand. You're hunched over a spinning mule or threading a loom, hands trembling as you feed fibers through teeth of steel. One slip, the machine doesn't stop. It eats. Fingers, arms, scalps. It's all just scrap to the gears.
Women work too, side by side with men, except they earn less, half the pay sometimes, even when doing the same tasks. And when the shift ends, their day isn't over. They head home to cook, scrub, and care for children while the men collapse. It's the double burden, factories by day, households by night. Exhaustion isn't a phase, it's their permanent state. And all of it is under constant watch. Talking to your neighbour? Fine. Pausing too long? Fine. Misthread a machine? Docked wages. The factory owner doesn't see people, just numbers. If you drop out, they'll have another desperate body at the gate by morning. The health cost is brutal. Cotton dust chokes your lungs until you're hacking every night. Mill cough doesn't go away, it just gets worse until you can barely climb stairs. Mule spinners handle grease that seeps into their skin, sometimes causing cancers no one even has names for yet. Your hearing? Gone within years from the constant roar. And when you're injured, because everyone gets injured, there's no doctor waiting. You wrap the wound, you pray it doesn't fester, and you keep working. Miss too many shifts, and your family starves. So how do you cope? Some drink. Hard liquor numbs the ache after 14 hours of standing, even if it robs tomorrow's energy. Others turn to faith, finding meaning in sermons about endurance. Jokes get traded in whispers during rare breaks, dark humour about missing fingers, because if you don't laugh, you'll cry. And then there are the working men's clubs, smoky rooms where workers share ale, swap stories, and sometimes hatch plans. Solidarity builds not in daylight, but in stolen hours after work. But solidarity frays too. Competition is constant. Who can weave more? Who earns a better shift? Who gets noticed by the overseer? The bosses feed this rivalry on purpose, setting workers against each other. It keeps you fighting for scraps instead of turning on them. You hate it, but you play the game, because losing means your kids go hungry. And kids, they're not just working beside you, they're dying beside you. One slips into a machine, crushed in seconds. Another collapses from exhaustion, body too weak to keep up. Their wages mattered to their families, so parents keep sending younger siblings in. You tell yourself, that won't happen to my child, but you know it could. Some days blur so badly you don't remember what you ate, if you ate.
The only reset is the whistle signalling the shift is over. But even then your body doesn't relax. It shakes, your lungs burn, you stagger home wondering how long you can keep this up before your body simply gives out. And yet you do it again tomorrow. Because what's the alternative? No wages, no food, no roof. Survival means stepping back into the monster's mouth day after day, knowing it will chew at you until there's nothing left. That's the irony of being a Victorian factory worker. You play the machine's game and the house always wins. Some days, the routine shifts slightly. A factory inspector appears, clipboard in hand, strolling the floor while the overseers suddenly soften their bark. Workers are told to mind your posture, keep your heads down, don't make trouble. For a moment, it feels like someone out there might actually care. But it's mostly theatre. The inspector scribbles notes about ventilation, about the number of children on the floor, about meal breaks. Everyone knows the report will gather dust in some office. Maybe the factory will throw in a small concession, an extra 5 minutes for lunch, a bucket of water placed at the end of the room, a flimsy wooden guard nailed onto one machine. The kind of change that looks good on paper but doesn't actually save lives. For workers though, even scraps feel like victories. The rumour spreads, they're giving us breaks now, things are changing. You cling to that because hope is oxygen when you're choking in lint and coal dust. For a week or two, spirits lift. Men joke more freely, women smile despite exhaustion. Kids steal tiny moments of play before being shoved back into line. It feels like maybe, just maybe, the tide is turning. But hope in a factory is fragile. Guards loosen, accidents spike again, fines return, and suddenly you're reminded that the owners haven't changed. They never wanted to. They only adapted long enough to avoid trouble. And just like that, the illusion cracks. The anger begins to smoulder. Whispers ripple through the ranks after a shift. What if we walked out? It's a dangerous thought. Strikes are often crushed before they even start. Some workers laugh bitterly. You think the boss cares if we leave? There's 100 desperate souls outside ready to take our place. And yet the whisper doesn't vanish. It grows. In the pub, in cramped kitchens, in alleys after dark, the talk spreads. Men pound fists on tables, women argue back, reminding them of hungry mouths at home. Children listen quietly, absorbing every word, even if they're not meant to. A decision is never unanimous, it can't be. But slowly, a current of defiance builds. When a strike finally comes, it doesn't begin with speeches or banners, it begins with silence. Machines stand still because hands refuse to move. Overseers bellow threaten, but the stillness holds. Workers pour into the street, hesitant at first, then swelling into a mass. The factory gates become a battleground of wills. For a moment, standing shoulder to shoulder, you feel powerful. You're not a cog anymore, you're part of a body, a force. Songs rise, chants echo, voices blend into something bigger than the roar of machinery. But power is never unchallenged. Within hours, the owner calls the police, sometimes soldiers. Buttons crack skulls, men are dragged away, women shoved back inside. The strike breaks under violence. Wages are lost, jobs forfeited, families thrown into deeper hunger. Those who dared speak are blacklisted. Names pass from factory to factory as warnings. Don't hire this troublemaker. You walk home after such days with rage in your chest and despair in your stomach. Was it worth it? The answer depends on who you ask. Some say yes, because even a failed strike proves you're not cattle. Others say no, because the cost is too high, the price always paid by the poor. And still the cycle repeats. Quiet compliance, small mercies, broken promises, whispers, strikes, repression. Each round teaches a lesson. Survival isn't just about enduring. Sometimes it's about resisting.
For many families, sending a child to school instead of a factory is a luxury they can't afford. But even a few hours of learning sparks possibility. The Education Act makes schooling compulsory in theory, but in practice, hunger still drags kids back to the mills. It's a cruel compromise. Choose between ignorance or starvation. And yet, the sight of a child clutching a book instead of crawling under machines is enough to kindle stubborn hope. Meanwhile, camaraderie grows into identity. Working men's clubs buzz not just with ale and laughter, but with debate, politics, rights, visions of a different future. Songs of solidarity echo louder, becoming cultural armor against humiliation. Women gather too, building their own networks of resilience, blending domestic survival strategies with political whispers. Community transforms suffering into fuel. Yet the factory owners are not blind. They respond not with sympathy, but with more control, more surveillance, more punishments. They justify it all as necessary discipline, as the price of efficiency in an industrial age. To them, every worker is replaceable. To you, every scar on your body says otherwise. The body count grows. Accidents don't stop. They become routine. A man's arm mangled here, a child suffocated in cotton dust there, a woman collapsing from sheer exhaustion. Each story spreads through the workforce like wildfire, grim reminders that life is cheap under the factory's rule. And here lies the cruel paradox. The very system that feeds your family is the same one destroying it. You curse the factory even as you drag yourself back inside each morning. It is prison and lifeline, executioner and provider. Still, change inches forward. A few reforms stick. Guards are mandated on machines. Children under a certain age are officially banned from labor. Workdays are shortened on paper, if not in practice. These improvements feel monumental in speeches, but on the floor they are whispers against the roar. You're still exhausted, still coughing up black phlegm, still terrified your child won't live to adulthood. That's the cruel trick of progress in the Victorian factory age. It doesn't come as rescue. It comes as a drip feed, enough to prevent total collapse, never enough to end the suffering. By mid-century, the contradiction is unbearable. Workers are more conscious, more organized, angrier. Owners are richer, more entrenched, more ruthless. Government inspectors show up more often, but even their reports can't drown out the roar of unrest rising across industrial Britain.
And inside the worker's chest, something has shifted. Survival alone is no longer enough. The whispers are louder now, the strikes more coordinated, the demands sharper. The longing isn't just for bread on the table, it's for dignity, for recognition, for the right to live without being ground down like raw material. The factory worker's day still begins before dawn, lungs filling with smoke, ears splitting with mechanical screams. But the day doesn't end with silence anymore. It ends with voices, angry, determined, demanding. The machine still rules, but the people trapped inside it are beginning to fight back. That's where the real story sits. Not in the machines, not in the owner's ledgers, but in the heartbeat of the workers who refuse to be silent cogs forever. If you had to live one day in this rule, would you last till nightfall? Comment yes or no in the comments section, and tell me your country too. I love seeing where you're all listening from. The cracks that once looked like progress, they slam shut. Whatever tiny scraps of mercy workers clawed from the system are snatched back, and the factory doubles down on its grip. The hours stretch longer again, 12, 13, 14. Not that the wages rise with them. Pay stagnates or shrinks even as the cost of bread climbs higher.
You're grinding your body harder for less, and every extra hour feels like another year carved off your life. That bucket of water they once left in the corner, gone. The flimsy wooden guard nailed onto a spinning machine, removed. Even the brief breaks, the 10 minutes that used to feel like stolen breaths of freedom, vanish under the excuse of tight schedules. Profit is the only god here, and you're the sacrifice.
And you feel it in your bones. The exhaustion goes deeper now, not just in your muscles but in your marrow. You start forgetting things, your hands slip, your mind blanks, and that's exactly when the machines bite. Accidents surge. They're everywhere. A kid's sleeve catches and drags him under a wheel. A woman's hair gets ripped out by a loom. Men collapse, legs crushed under carts, skulls split on iron floors. Injuries don't surprise anyone anymore. They're expected. Every shift you look around wondering whose turn is it today. Here's the horror. Even death doesn't slow production. Someone screams, someone bleeds out, and the overseer just yells for the rest to keep working. The body's carried off like broken equipment. A fresh worker, probably younger, probably more desperate, fills the space before the blood dries. And if you think fighting back will save you, think again. Strikes bring punishment. Owners blacklist anyone who dares open their mouth. Your name gets passed around and suddenly no mill in town will hire you. You're not just fired, you're erased. Your family starves, your children beg, and the shame gnaws at you worse than hunger. Sometimes they don't even wait for a strike. Lockouts slam the doors shut before workers can organise. Imagine it. You turn up for your shift, already half dead with exhaustion, only to find the gates chained and guards stationed. No warning, no pay, just days, maybe weeks of no income, while your landlord still demands rent and your kids still demand food. That's not negotiation. That's punishment designed to break you before you can even stand up straight.
And when you crawl home after this kind of day, what do you find? Not peace, not comfort. Poverty breeds sickness, and sickness doesn't wait politely for your rest. The air in your slums stinks of sewage. Water is foul, stagnant. Cholera sweeps through streets. Typhus chews through whole households. Tuberculosis is everywhere. Red coughs, bloody rags, children wasting away in corners. So you drink. Everyone does. Ale is safer than water. Gin cheaper than medicine. A bottle numbs the pain, quiets the screaming in your head, helps you forget the machines that haunt your dreams. But alcohol doesn't fix, it rots. Families fracture under the weight of it. Violence slips into homes where exhaustion and bitterness already fester. Men lash out, women snap. Kids grow up learning that fists and silence are normal. The psychological toll? You don't need a doctor's words for it. You feel it every time your chest caves with despair. You can't sleep, or you sleep too much. You drag yourself to the factory half dead and wonder, what's the point? Depression isn't a medical term here, it's just life. Life without hope, life without end. And yet, the world outside whispers that it's your fault. The papers talk about the moral failings of the poor. Reformists speak in paternal tones. Workers must be guided to sobriety, to better habits, to humility. Even Henry Mayhew, who describes the filth and misery of London's poor in agonising detail, still laces his words with judgment. To much of society, you're either a moral weakling or an obstacle to economic progress, never a human being caught in a machine. That's the cruelty of it. You're dying by inches, and half the world insists you deserve it. And every now and then, tragedy slams the community so hard it rattles every soul inside it. A fire in a mill, an explosion in a mine, the death of children who never should have been working in the first place. These disasters hit like a sledgehammer, because they don't just kill bodies, they kill illusions.
They strip bare the lie that maybe you can get through this if you just keep your head down. At the pub, people rage and weep in equal measure. Some vow never to send their kids back to the floor. Others confess they have no choice. You watch a mother bury her boy and drag her daughter back to the same factory the next week because survival doesn't pause for grief. That's when despair really settles in. Not in the explosion itself, but in the return to normal afterwards. The machine never stops. You feel the squeeze now from every side. Outside forces, longer hours, wage cuts, retaliations. Inside forces, despair, depression, broken families. The walls press tighter and you're caught in the middle, body and soul grinding down. The cracks of hope you once clung to are closing. Every avenue looks blocked. And here's the worst part. You know deep down it's not done. You haven't even hit bottom yet. The 1830s, 1840s, these aren't just years on a calendar. They're meat grinders swallowing people whole. You, a mill hand in 1842 Manchester, or a coal hewer's son in the pits near Barnsley, know the truth. Every day is a coin toss between survival and disaster. And then disaster hits. Take the Husker Colliery, June 1838. 26 children, ages 7 to 17, drowned in a ventilation drift after a thunderstorm flooded the mine. They weren't workers in the romantic sense. They were kids who should have been chasing kites. Instead, they drowned in black tunnels with coal dust in their lungs. Their names, James, Martha, Isaac, read like gravestones. And when the news spread, even the public gasped. But inside the mining towns, you didn't gasp. You knew it could have been you. Back in the textile mills, you hear stories that chill the skin. Fires race through cotton rooms where lamps burn too close to fibre. One spark and the whole place turns into a coffin of flame. Windows are barred because, God forbid, a worker slip out during a shift, and people throw themselves against iron bars until the smoke fills their lungs. The lucky die fast. You? You might not burn, you might not drown, but your fate can be just as cruel. A power loom grabs your arm, tears the flesh clean, and leaves you crippled. What then? A cripple isn't paid. You're sent home with a stump and a debt. The factory doesn't remember you, but your family does, because now they starve.
By the 1850s, even as new factory acts are whispered through Parliament, you see the joke of it. Inspectors show up once in a blue moon, usually announced beforehand. Floors are scrubbed, children hidden, safety masks hung on walls for show. The moment the inspector leaves, it's back to 12-hour shifts and bare hands on spinning steel. The laws look good in print. In your reality, they're paper shields against a cannon. And hope. Hope gets crushed not in the factory but at home. You return after a 14-hour shift to one room crammed with 6 bodies. Your wife, or maybe you're the wife, sits by a candle mending clothes because there's no money for new ones. One child coughs, that rattling cough you've heard too many times. You know what it means. Tuberculosis, the consumption that chews through the poor like a plague. There's no doctor, there's barely bread. You can't afford coal for the fire and food for the belly, so you choose warmth tonight and hunger tomorrow. Some families break under this weight. Alcohol loosens fists, tempers snap. A father beats his son for nodding off at the loom. A mother pushed past reason abandoned her baby at the parish door because she cannot feed it. These are not villains. They're people cracking under pressure that would splinter steel. But that doesn't make the wounds any less real. By 1860, newspaper readers in London are tutting over reports from the north. Henry Mayhew's London Labour and the London Poor spills ink over slum life, cataloguing misery like a naturalist with beetles in jars.
but the tone drips with superiority. You're not a victim. You're a specimen. A dirty drunk. A wretch. The middle class nods along. Of course the poor suffer, they're morally weak. They never see the inside of the mills where your fingers bleed raw, or the pits where boys push coal wagons in tunnels too narrow to stand. And yet, the real gut punch isn't how society sees you, it's how you start to see yourself. The grind eats not just your body but your mind. Depression settles like damp in your bones. You stop dreaming, you stop planning, you stop believing tomorrow will be different. When a neighbour's child dies in a factory fire, you feel sorrow, but also something worse. Resignation. You whisper, it was their turn. That's the point when the machine has fully won.
This is the bottom. It isn't always one dramatic explosion. It's the slow, grinding death of hope. But sometimes, yes, it is one catastrophic day. Like the 1844 explosion at Haswell Colliery in County Durham. 95 men and boys dead. The community gutted. The funerals stretched for days. Rows of coffins carried through streets lined with weeping women. And what changed? A parliamentary report. A few clucks of sympathy, and then the pits opened again. Widows went back to sewing, sons back to digging. The cycle didn't break. And in these moments, standing over a coffin, staring at an empty chair, coughing blood into a rag, you feel the weight of inevitability. Maybe the factory acts will help your children's children. Maybe unions will grow strong enough in 50 years to matter. But you're just fodder, a cog, replaceable, disposable. By the late 1860s, writers like Friedrich Engels are screaming on paper about the condition of the working class. He describes exactly what you live: alienation, suffering, exploitation. But knowing someone wrote it down doesn't stop the loom from ripping your hands open or cholera from stealing your daughter overnight. His words may stir the intellectuals, but they don't fill your stomach. So here you stand, in the factory, in the slum, in the graveyard. Maybe you're a 14-year-old scavenger under the looms in 1841 Leeds. Maybe you're a 32-year-old spinner in 1855 Manchester, your lungs shredded from lint. Maybe you're a widow in 1862, your husband blacklisted for striking, your children begging barefoot in the street. Whoever you are, the truth presses down like the roar of the machines. This is it. The world has wrung you dry. The fight is gone, the future is gone. Even faith feels like a cruel joke. And still, the machines spin, the furnaces roar, the overseer shouts. Life doesn't pause to let you grieve. You've hit the floor, the point where even despair feels heavy to carry. This is the lowest point, the hollow that shows you just how brutal the Victorian machine can be. And deep down, one thought gnaws at you. If this is the bottom, what comes next?
The silence after disaster is heavier than the noise of the machines. When the factory floor finally empties, or when the last spade of dirt covers another coffin, you sit in the corner of your one-room home, staring at the candle burning low. For once, it's quiet, too quiet, and the quiet lets the grief crawl in. You think about the boy who used to thread looms beside you, 12 years old, laughed too much, always hungry, gone in an accident that took less than a minute. You think about your own children coughing through the night, their little lungs fighting battles they never chose. And for a moment you wonder if this life has already beaten you. It's not just the body that breaks in these years, it's the mind. Depression and despair stalk you the way the overseer stalks the shop floor. You wake with dread, not hunger. You go to work with emptiness, not anger. That's the darkest part.
when you stop even expecting tomorrow to be better. But in that darkness, an idea begins to form. Maybe not shouted, maybe not even spoken aloud, but whispered in your chest. Alone, you can't survive this. Together, maybe you can. The old endurance, keeping your head down, praying for luck, hasn't worked. You've buried too many friends to believe it ever will. You begin to see the truth. The machine only wins when you stay silent. That's the revelation. It's not strength to suffer quietly. It's strength to stand up. And so, in the back room of a public house in 1848, you meet with others after the shift ends. No grand speeches, just tired voices saying the same thing. We can't go on like this. Maybe it's a union organiser pushing leaflets into your hand talking of rights. Maybe it's an old neighbour reminding you that the Chartists marched for the vote and lost, but lit fire anyway. Either way, you realise the only path forward is together. That's the turn. You commit, not to despair, not to silence, but to action. To joining a strike even if it risks blacklisting. To sending your child to a Sunday school even if it costs wages, because education is a weapon too. To believing that survival isn't just about getting through the day, it's about building a future. The candle flickers low. Tomorrow the machines will roar again. But this time, you won't just endure them, you'll fight.
The year is 1868. You're bone-tired, calloused and scarred, but you're not alone anymore. Word has spread, workers from across trades are gathering, and the whispers that once felt dangerous now roar in public halls. The Trades Union Congress has been formed. You never thought you'd live to see such a thing. Bricklayers, spinners, miners, even dock workers, standing shoulder to shoulder. You walk into the meeting hall, the smell of pipe smoke thick, and for once you're not just one voice in the noise of machinery, you're a part of a crowd that can't be ignored. This is different. You remember those nights when grief ate at you in silence, when you buried friends or watched your children cough in damp rooms. Back then, hopelessness felt like the only truth. But here's the revelation made flesh. Unity is power. You grip the back of a wooden bench, listening to men and women who've lived the same scars tell you what you already feel in your bones, that survival isn't enough. Dignity must be won. It doesn't come easy. Strikes are called. You stand on picket lines while factory gates stay locked, the overseer's cold eyes watching from behind iron bars. Your stomach gnaws with hunger because strike pay never stretches far enough, and your wife trades her shawl at the pawn shop just to keep bread on the table. Children cry for food, and neighbours whisper that maybe it's not worth the risk. The owners know this. They're betting on your desperation breaking you before they bend. And sometimes it almost does. Weeks drag by, and you start wondering if you've made a mistake. But then something shifts. Newspapers print your cause. Middle-class reformers show up at rallies. Coins are passed around to help you last one more day. Strangers you'll never meet believe in your fight. That faith is oxygen. You hold the line. Little by little, cracks form in the iron wall. The government, once blind, begins to write laws. The Factory Acts trickle down through the years 1833, 1847, 1850, and on, never perfect, often betrayed by loopholes and weak enforcement, but still a hammer against the worst abuses. Hours shrink. Children are pried, however reluctantly, out of factories and into schools. 10-hour days become not a fantasy, but a right written into law. You hear about inspectors who now have the power to walk into mills unannounced, to peer into the shadows, where once anything could happen.
Do the owners like it? Not a chance. They fight it with every lawyer and politician they can buy. But the tide has turned. You see it in their eyes. Fear. For the first time, they're the ones forced to adapt. And while the laws shift, so do the streets around you. Sanitation reforms creep into cities. The stinking cesspits and cholera outbreaks that once wiped out whole families start to recede. Clean water pumps appear, drains dug, streets paved. It doesn't erase the grime of the factory, but it means your children's odds of living past 20 just got better. Then comes 1870, and with it, something you never thought you'd see. The state demanding children go to school. Not just the wealthy, not just the church charities, every child. It's patchy, sure. Half the time you still drag your eldest out of bed for wages instead of lessons, but even 2 hours with a chalkboard and a book is a seed. You see your son writing his name for the first time, clumsy but proud, and something swells in your chest. You wonder, will his life be more than looms and coal dust? The fight never stops. Strikes break out again and again. Some won, some lost. Every picket line feels like gambling with your children's stomachs, but there's a new resilience in you. You've seen what unity can do. Even when pay is cut, even when blacklists keep you out of work, the memory of standing shoulder to shoulder gives you the will to keep pushing. You're no longer just a victim of circumstance. You're part of a movement that grows larger than your single life. And it's not just about wages anymore. It's about being recognized as human, about refusing to bow your head like livestock in the face of men who grow rich off your pain. Every march, every chant in the streets, every petition hammered onto a politician's desk drives that truth deeper. You matter. By the late century, you can see the change in the younger generation. Your daughter, once small enough to fall asleep against your soot-blackened shirt, now knows how to read. She debates politics with a sharp tongue that would have gotten you whipped in the mill, and she speaks of the Labour Representation Committee, of workers taking seats in Parliament, of laws written not by lords but by the very people they once crushed. You can't help but smile at her defiance. It's proof that the struggle has sown something lasting.
And yet, the scars don't vanish. Your lungs still ache with every breath. The cough that never leaves you reminds you that dust has already claimed pieces of you that can't be reclaimed. You walk with a limp from an accident long ago when safety guards were a joke. Progress comes, but it comes too late for many. You bury comrades who don't live to see the reforms they fought for. The machine eats lives even as its teeth are blunted. Still, look around at the difference. From the days when workers were shadows with no voice, to now when tens of thousands gather in Trafalgar Square demanding rights. From nights of whispered fears, to banners raised in broad daylight. From hunger accepted as fate, to a generation daring to dream of more. The contrast is staggering, and you know, because you've lived it, that it was bought not by mercy from above, but by blood, defiance, and solidarity from below. The final whistle of the day blows, and you step out of the mill. The sun is low, the sky streaked red, as if even the heavens carry the scars of fire and soot. But something has shifted in you. When you first walked these cobblestones years ago, you were a body enduring. Now, you're a worker aware, a citizen, a fighter who knows the struggle is not just yours, but everyone's, across towns, trades, and generations. And maybe tomorrow will bring another setback. Maybe wages will dip, or another child will cough, or the overseer will sneer that you're nothing but a cog. But deep down, you know the truth now. Cogs, when bound together, turn the whole machine. You head home, not beaten, not hopeless, but carrying something precious, an ember of resilience. It glows in the faces of your children, in the voices of your comrades, in the laws inching their way through Parliament. That ember will outlive you. It will burn into the century to come, fueling the fires of unions, reforms, and revolutions yet to be written. And so the day ends. The story closes not with silence, but with a murmur that's growing louder.
A murmur of change, of defiance, of a future clawed out of soot and suffering. You've lived the dark night. Now you carry the dawn. That was a day in the life of a Victorian factory worker. From the grime of dawn to the ember of hope at dusk, you've seen not just survival, but the birth of solidarity. If this story pulled you in, and if you stayed awake this long, you might as well drift into the next story. It's waiting for you.